Hey guys, it's Story. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my spring wrap-up. So this is all the books that I have read this past spring. I don't really like the word wrap-up, but I feel like everyone calls them wrap-ups, and if I don't call it a wrap-up, like, people won't know what I'm talking about. So I'm going to call it a wrap-up anyways. If you hear any background noise, my brother is playing a video game in the next room. I promise no guns are going off in this household. It's just a video game. But anyways, let's just get started with the books. Okay, so the books I'm going to be going over today, I rated 3 of them 5 stars, 1 is a 4-star, 2 are 3 stars. I actually have one that is 3.5 stars, which is surprising because I hate half stars. There are no 2 stars and there is 1 1-star. But anyways, the first book I read this past spring was Sun and Flowers by Rupi Kaur. For some reason I'm wanting to say The Sun and Her Flowers. I can't remember the actual title of it, which is really weird, but you'll see it somewhere on the screen here. So this is the book I actually gave 3.5 stars, and the reason for that is because I read Milk and Honey by Rupi Kaur before this book and I gave it 4 stars. I really loved that book. I talked about it in my winter wrap-up, which I'll link my playlist down below of all my wrap-ups I've done so far on my channel. But anyways, I definitely liked Milk and Honey way more. I related to that book a lot, so I felt like a connection with it, whereas this book I couldn't really relate to it. I love the whole feminine aspect to it and the whole like self-love aspect to it, so I guess I did relate to it in that way, but other than that, I just didn't relate to it as much or loved it as much as Milk and Honey. And I understand they're 2 different books and they shouldn't really be compared, but yeah, I still really liked it. I read this in 2 sittings actually, and it is a bit longer than Milk and Honey. And yeah, that's all I really have to say about it. But if you are wanting to try out Rupi Kaur, I definitely would try out Milk and Honey. Like I said, this one's good, but definitely not as good as Milk and Honey. The next book I read was called Shop Till You Drop: Consumer Behavior in American Culture. I read this book for school. I know it's kind of a boring book to talk about for people that aren't into marketing, so I'm not going to say much about it. I gave it 3 stars, and the reason I gave it 3 stars is because I didn't have very high expectations for it. I thought it was going to be kind of boring, to be honest, but it did have some intriguing aspects and it did teach me some things I hadn't learned in school already, so that's why I gave it 3 stars. The next book I read was 10 Things I Can See From Here by Carrie Mack. I gave this book 1 star. I think this is probably the worst book I'm going to read this year. If you've watched my mid-year book freakout tag, you already know about this book because I had it as the answer for most disappointing book this year so far. I'll link that video down below too. But pretty much the whole reason I read this book was because I wanted to read about anxiety. I have anxiety myself, and I really want to read a book that was about that. I wanted to see other people's take on anxiety and kind of read a story about anxiety. With that being said, the main character's anxiety is very different from mine. She pretty much has a very strong fear about dying and about her loved ones dying. And I couldn't relate to that. I thought it was kind of the stereotype of anxiety, to be completely honest. And also the characters were super bland. None of them had character descriptions. They didn't develop at all. Even the main character, like, her anxiety at the end didn't really develop. She was still who she was. And also there was no plot to this book at all. I mean, every book has like a plot, but like, it was the most boring and bland plot I have ever read. Super hard for me to get through. Like, I had to push myself to read this, and I tried to finish it super fast so that I could read a better book, but like, it was taking me so long because the book was so boring and I did not relate to it at all. I wish I had something good to say about it, but I don't. I'm sorry. The next book is The Darkest Part of the Forest by Holly Black. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. The main reason I picked this book up is because there was a lot of hype around The Cruel Prince by Holly Black at the time, and I wanted to pick that book up, but I didn't want to take a chance on it unless I knew I was going to like Holly Black's books, because I know a lot of her books are very like fae themed, and I've never read about fae before. This was the first book I have ever read about fae, and I do have to say I do like reading about them. They're kind of like intriguing, fantastical beings to me. My favorite to read about personally is vampires. I feel like that's so like YA stereotypical, but it's the truth. But now I feel like I have found a new favorite to read. I feel like fae books are kind of like what's in for YA fantasy right now. Anyways, I did really like Holly Black's writing style. I love that the main female was like the knight of the story instead of like the typical male, and that she was always kind of fighting for herself. No one had to like save her. I don't think Holly Black was meaning for this book to be like feminist, but it came off feminist to me because of those aspects. So I really appreciated that. It's a fantastical mystery, which is my favorite thing to read. The only really negative things I had to say about this book was that it does play on the trope where the parents don't exist. There are parents in the story, but they just don't play a huge part. I wrote this down and I remember this, but I don't remember like the details for it. There was something at the end. I wanted more from the story at the end. I didn't feel like completely satisfied, but like I couldn't spot the details to why, and like thinking about it, I still can't spot the details. So yeah, those two things are why I took a star off. It just wasn't completely a 5-star read for me. I do want to read The Cruel Prince eventually, but I don't think I'm going to get to it anytime soon. The next book I read was The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. I have a full book review on my channel for this, so I will link it down below. But I did give this a 5 out of 5 stars. It is one of the best books I have read this year. I'm not a contemporary person and I fell in love with this book. And since this is a new adult or adult book, I really want to dive into some new adult and adult books. I've always wanted to try those types of books, and if you're like me and you want to try those types of books, you need to start with The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. It is so good, and you'll definitely be in my position where you're wanting to read more, because Sally Thorne only has one book, and that's really depressing, but she does have another book coming out in like October, I think, so I'm definitely gonna pick that up. I really want to pick up The Kiss Quotient too. I'm about to get that from Book of the Month as one of my free add-on books. But anyways, that's beside the point. This is a wrap-up video. Moving on. The next book I read was The Wicked Deep by Shay Earnshaw. I don't know if that's her last name, but I know her first name is Shay, or she. Shaya? Somewhere around there. So I give this book 3 out of 5 stars. I loved the setting of this book. The setting is kind of like a Washington setting, kind of like Forks, where it's like really rainy, but there's a beach there. It's kind of beachy, but like it's dark and gloomy and rains a lot. I love that setting. That's probably my favorite setting ever in books. And I also love the idea of reading a siren story because I've never read about sirens before. This book is about a girl who lives in a town where it's kind of run by the Swan sisters. So they're 3 sisters that the town killed way back in the day because they were believed to be witches. A lot of people think this book is a witch book, but it's not. It is a siren book. They weren't actually witches, but they became sirens because of all that happening. Anyways, every year the Swan sisters take over 3 girls' bodies and they drown 3 boys in the harbor. Sometimes it's 4 boys, sometimes it's 5 boys, but they drown boys in the water. What did I just say a minute ago? Did I say harbor? Anyways, they get drowned, and our main character is trying to just get by without being taken over by a swan sister. She finds a mysterious boy that is in town that she starts liking. This book was so predictable. Like when I think of this book, the word predictable is just like the only thing that comes in my mind. When you first start reading this book and you're learning about the characters and the town and the history and whatnot, start to like slowly get these theories in your head, like predicting stuff, not just cause like you want to, it just like kind of, happens because there is mystery in this book. And what happened with me was the most predictable thing I had guessed happened. From the moment it happened, I was disappointed with the book and I couldn't like shake it out of my head that I predicted the whole thing. I was surprised towards the end. Some things happen that will surprise you, but also nothing really happens in the book until 3/4 the way through. And for me personally, I always hate the first half of books and love the second half of books. So if I am in the middle and I'm already starting the second half of the book and I'm not like in love with the characters or the story or the plot or whatever it is, I just am not gonna like the book. That's just how I am as a reader personally. The fact that nothing happened 3/4 the way through the book, I was just like definitely disappointed and bored. I was just bored with the story. I feel like the author could have taken it in a different direction, a less predictable direction. Really had fun with the story because it's a really fun storyline. It was just too predictable for me. I also didn't read the physical copy. I listened to the audiobook, and after listening to it, I realized that I am not an audiobook person. Not like traditional novels as audiobooks. I I can't listen to them anymore. I actually deleted my subscription, so yeah, just like a super average read for me. The next book I read was Light is the New Black by Rebecca Campbell. I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. I love this book. This book found its way to me and my soul at the perfect time in my life. I know it did, and if you guys listen to or read this book, you will feel the same way, trust me. It's super inspiring and motivational, and if you're just going through a hard time right now, I really recommend it. I've never tried like spiritual type books before, then definitely try it. And what I mean by spiritual is not religious. This is not a religious book, it is spiritual. Still don't really know what I mean, then maybe you should just try it out to figure it out for yourself. If I had to pick one book that I have read so far this year that I think everyone should read, it would be this book. I kind of want to reread the physical copy and see if I get like the same experience, which is so crazy because I literally just finished it like a month and a half ago maybe. I just feel like I could read it 1,000 times and it's gonna give me those same feelings over and over again and just make me feel really like motivated and inspired. So I'm definitely planning on rereading this, honestly, like once or twice a year because I just loved it that much. Last but not least is my favorite book I'm going to talk about today probably, and that is Legendary by Stephanie Garber. I could talk about this book forever, guys. Like, I really should just make a book review video, but this is one of the best books I've read this year. It's definitely between this and The Hating Game. This is definitely the best fantasy read I've had this year. I have 2 pages of notes on this book. 2 whole pages because I had so many thoughts and feelings while reading this. If you like books where the author takes you on a roller coaster and you're constantly guessing what's gonna happen, you never know, you're going to love this series, guys. Seriously, I can't recommend it enough. It is one of my favorite fantasy series of all time. Like, it's up there with Twilight and Harry Potter now, which is saying a lot. If you've never read Caraval before, you definitely should pick it up and try it. Have read Caraval before, you definitely should pick up Legendary and continue with the series because this book takes the series to a whole new level. Like, when you read Caraval, you're like at this level and it's like so amazing and it can't get any better. You start reading this and it's like up here and it's like, how did she even, like, how did she make it all fit? I don't know. By the way, Stephanie Garber has noticed me twice on social media now, so I'm feeling pretty proud about that. I think she knows I'm fangirling hard over her in this series. By the way, I'll link my Legendary Release Day vlog down below. I vlogged going out and finding this book and picking it up on the day it came out. If you don't know the synopsis of Caraval, pretty much there is our main character Scarlett and her sister Donatella go to this magical island of Caraval where this famous magician named Legend has created this like magical game for people to play, and it's all based upon his magic. What happens in Caraval is Donatella is missing and the prize of the game is to find her. The whole point of the game is to find Donatella, and your prize, you get 1 wish. So that's Caraval. For Legendary, it is through Donatella's point of view, which is great because I personally thought Donatella was kind of annoying in the first book, but I have grown to love her in this book and a couple other characters too. There's a new character named Jax that I'm obsessed with. He's one of my new favorite villains of all time. I'm just like so in love with him and I don't know why. No one ever talks about him. Like, the people that have read this so far, no one talks about Jax. Everyone talks about Dante, which I like Dante too, but I don't know. I've never read a character like Jax before, and if you have read this or you're reading this right now or you're going to and you've started it, whatever, you know what I mean by that. But anyways, 5 out of 5 stars. I loved it so much. It's such a fun series, guys. If you want to read to have fun and to be entertained, read this. Like, I don't consider myself a very critical reader. I pick up books to read for fun and to be entertained, and this is that book. This is the type of books I love to read. It's fantasy with some mystery, but it also like keeps you intrigued and entertained, and it's fun. I just can't recommend this series enough, and I can't say anything else to like make y'all understand how obsessed I am with this series. But I'm so glad I read Caraval last year, and I'm so glad I just read this recently, and I'm so sad that I have to wait another year for the next book. It drives me crazy, but it will be well worth the wait. Okay guys, that is my spring wrap up. That is all the books I read this past spring. I hope you guys really liked this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you don't want to miss out on any more videos from me, then please hit that big red button over here somewhere. I would really appreciate it. And I'll see you guys in my next one. Deuces!